Good afternoon. It's a delight for me to be here today, following up from what Alan has said and listening to him talk about our plans for 2017. I just get the feeling that there are a few terms that you're going to hear again and again through the 2 days. It's about growth, it will be about 5S, it will be about ZBB, and it will be about C for G. And these themes might run through a lot of what we're going to say about. Now, what I'm going to do over the next 25 minutes or so is to give you a sense of the home care strategy that we had spoken of in 2014, the progress that we've made since then, but even more importantly, share with you why I believe that the business is very well poised to address the challenges and opportunities that we are likely to see ahead of us. But first, let me remind you of what we had said in our strategy. At the end of 2014, many of you would remember, we were at a stage where the home care business had been doing very well in terms of growth. In fact, if you take a 5-year period or so before 2014, we were growing at a CAGR of over 6% per annum. That's a wonderful rate, growing ahead of the market every single year, growing market share. However, you would also remember that at that stage, the margins of this business were low. And that low profitability that we had at that point in time was largely on account of some very conscious choices that the business had made. Conscious choices to correct for years of underinvestment that the business had faced, to fix the underlying issues of that business. And that's what we had done. But somewhere in 2014, we came to the conclusion that the period of correction, that underinvestment phase was over. The business was strong, and it was time for the business to embrace a new role which meant that it now needed to deliver strong value creation as it went ahead. For that, we put in place a strategy. That strategy we had called simply winning today, winning tomorrow. And that strategy really meant that we had to remain focused on the things that had worked for us, which is what I would call the brilliant basics or the fundamentals of a consumer goods business, which is focus on product quality and the investment in our brands. That had what helped us, and that we had to continue. But even as we did that, we had to have an eye on the future because the world is changing very, very rapidly. We had to future-proof this business by identifying those pockets of future growth, be it benefits, be it channels, be it geographies. That was the second leg. And the third, of course, a relentless focus on cost, end-to-end cost, to step up margins at a pace that we hadn't done before. That is what we had said at the end of 2014. As we stand here towards the end of 2017, I'm really happy to report that when you look at the results that we've got in this period, you have to say that the strategy has been working for us. In this period, we've been growing at a CAGR of 5%, ahead of the markets. Markets have been slowing down, and we've continued to grow ahead of them, and as you would see from these charts, continued to grow share year on year. But what is even more heartening is the fact that we've managed to do that with a step up in our margins. First half 2007 operating margins of just under 12%. And there's a big step up from where we were just 3 years ago. And the experience that we've had over the last few years gives us the confidence to get to the 16%, which is what we said we would get to as a part of our strategic review, which was announced in the month of April. Now, this performance is underpinned by a few factors which work for us. The first and foremost is the quality of our brands, the strength of our brands and our portfolio, strong brands, iconic brands, brands which are household names across the world. And that's helped us, be it in fabric cleaning, fabric conditioning, or household care. Really solid portfolio is what we've got. But even more, not in addition to this portfolio, is the geographic footprint that we have. You saw Graham talk about the fact that Unilever is 57% in the emerging markets, and we know the value of that. When you look at home care, 80% of our business happens to come from emerging markets. And not just 80% from the emerging markets, which of course has its advantage. The fact is that we have very strong positions in most of these emerging markets. 7 out of 10, we are leaders, and leaders by a mile in many of those markets. Now, we all get the value of this footprint. But I have to say, as we started looking at this more closely, as we started carrying out an exercise as to where will the pockets of future growth be, and we did a quantitative modeling exercise to understand this through the lens of geography, through the lens of benefits, and through the lens of channels, some very revealing things came across. If I was to give you a sense of what it means through the lens of geography, we were pleasantly surprised by what we found. Over the next 5 years, more than 85% of all market growth will come from the emerging markets. Not just that. If you look at it a little more closely, 40% of all growth will come from 2 countries, almost a quarter of that coming from 1 country alone, which is India. That's revealing. What is even more revealing is when you look at countries which are seemingly small countries like Philippines and Vietnam. Each of those countries, in terms of incremental market growth, would be the amount of incremental growth that you could get from the United States. And Nigeria and Pakistan could give you the same incremental market growth as Brazil. It's important for us to understand this because it tells you that there is a very, very significant advantage because we are very well placed in general across all emerging markets. Yes, there's a job to be done in China, but otherwise we are very well placed to address opportunities of growth coming forward. So that was a look through the lens of geography. Let's have a look at where that future growth will be when we look at it through the lens of benefits. Now, if I take the example of laundry to illustrate this point. Now, seemingly niche benefit spaces like care, like hygiene, like naturals, like eco-friendly, seemingly niche benefit areas, they are likely to grow at over 2 times the rate of other benefits like stain removal, whiteness, and fragrance, the space that we focused on thus far. Now, I'm going to touch upon just 1 or 2 of these to give you a sense of what it means. Take sensitive. Now, we all know that there are more and more people who are concerned about the effect that they have. They have sensitive skin. They're suffering from allergies. Research suggests that the number in markets like the United States and in Europe would be about 10%. But research also suggests that if you ask people about this question, almost 1/3 of people believe that they have sensitive skin. And therein lies the opportunity. The opportunity for our own brands to have extensions and offer products which actually address this, but also opportunities for specialist brands like Neutral, which are focused around this space. And it's a brand which has now been extended to 11 countries and in my view has the potential to go across many, many more countries. Or take the case of naturals. We know naturals is a big trend. We can see that growing everywhere. It's small today. But it might be small, but take a market like the US or Europe, it already accounts for more than 50% of the total growth of that market. And that's the thing that we have to understand at this stage. Yeah? And while we may have offerings of our core brands which can move into this space, the truth is our portfolio lacked. Our portfolio lacked a brand which was truly natural in its core, in its genesis, and how it was founded. And that's why the acquisition of 7th Generation was such a strategic acquisition for us. And we will look to see how we can extend 7th Generation to other parts of the world. Let me move on to the 3rd leg. I said we looked at future pockets of growth through 3 lenses: geography, benefits, and channels. It should come as no surprise to any of you when you look at this. When you find out that when I say that e-commerce will be the fastest growing channel by far. But what is surprising and certainly surprised us as we did this work was to let us realize how significant it could be in how short a time period. We believe 1 billion opportunity for home care alone in the next few years. What was also revealing is that the bulk of this opportunity is likely to come from the top 5 or 6 markets. Equally, while grocery online, the traditional stores moving into online sales will be important, the biggest disruption will be from pure play retailers like Amazon and Alibaba. And that really means for a business like ours, as Alan said, we have to start investing in capability building. We are investing ahead. We are doing a lot of work to understand the needs of this channel, build capability, and also start thinking in terms of how we can innovate for this channel so that we start winning in this space. So with that, hopefully, the actions that we are taking shift our portfolio into the benefit spaces of tomorrow to address the channels of tomorrow, and of course, aided by the fantastic footprint that we have, our geographic footprint. I believe that as a business we are very well poised to continue the wonderful growth momentum that we've had over the last 7, 8, 9 years, where we've continued growing well ahead of the market. We should be able to do that in the years to come as well. But that is only one part of the story that was there. The second part is, what do we need to do to step up our margins? Now, many of you have heard 5S. 5S, a program that was launched over 2 years ago, just under 3 years now, where we've been driving this, a program that has delivered wonderful results. A program which is much more, and I highlight, a program which is much more than just the conventional cost-saving exercise that every company undergoes. A program which looks at end-to-end costs far more holistically than we've done before. That it's delivered great results is here to see. But this program, and I'm going to just give you a sense of a few things that makes this program more than just a conventional cost-saving exercise. Now, helped by tools like design to value, as we call it. And design to value is essentially a very forensic exercise and a look at cost. And we look at cost through a lens of what does it cost us, but for that cost that we are inputting or incurring into the product, what is the value that a consumer will attribute to that cost which is incurred. Wherever the cost incurred is higher than the value received by the or perceived by the consumer, that's an opportunity for you to think again and see how you can save and alter that cost structure that we've got. Or indeed a strategic Partner to Win program. Now we've been running a Partner to Win program for several years, and over the last 2 or 3 years we've seen the huge value that we get out of that by leveraging on the enormous capabilities that these partners have. By accessing new technologies in packaging or alternative surfactants or just weight efficient ingredients which have now come up, which our partners have capabilities in. By accessing those, we found an enormous opportunity to save cost in this period. Now while we do all of this, there is another aspect which consumes cost in the organization, which is the hidden, unwanted, non-value added complexity. 3 years ago, we started talking about this drive for simplification. Simplification in a way that does not compromise the consumer value that you add, and yet is dramatically simplifying our own operations and reducing cost. We had a belief that we could dramatically reduce the number of product formulation chassis, the number of packaging options, the number of ingredient specifications that we have, and reduce all of that without compromising the consumer experience. Over this period, you see we started off with laundry powders and moved across to toilet cleaners and liquids, where we are between 50 and 60% already in terms of the reduction that we've had. But, and on an overall program, when you extend it to everything else, we've already reduced 40% of the hidden internal complexity, which did not add any value to the consumer, has been removed. All of this starts contributing to the savings program that we've got. Last but not the least, I want to talk about ZBB and NRM. Now, while the 5S program helped us focus on product cost, the ZBB program enabled us to focus on the marketing investment, the logistics, and indeed the overhead space, which is there, and Mark is going to talk a little bit more about that space. But if you take the marketing spend, I think it was revealing. Just the exercise that we went through demonstrated that there was an opportunity for us to save, not just in promotions which didn't work, but in terms of the assets which we produced. We discovered that less than 5% of the assets that we produced were worn out, which meant that they had finished the effective life that they had. Less than 5%. What it means is that we can reduce making new assets, we can run them for longer, and running the same asset, effective assets for longer, has plenty of benefits. It improves consistency, strengthens memory structures for the consumer, and saves production costs. In media, we found enormous benefits as well. We found in several markets, we were oversaturated, and there was an opportunity for us to cut back without compromising brand measures. And the results, like I said, you can see out here. On net revenue management, again, a really, really powerful capability that we've started building across the organization. Now, in layman's term, net revenue management is simply the art and science of pricing. When you get it right, of course, there's a lot of detail and a lot of science which goes into this, but in the end, when you get it right, you uncover smart opportunities for pricing. And a smart opportunity of pricing delivers two things. It must give you incremental turnover, and it must be margin accretive turnover. That's the value of running a good NRM exercise. And as you can see, as we've run that across 15 markets, both in laundry and in HHC, we've already discovered the opportunities to drive margins and turnover along the lines that you see out here. So that really was the strategy that we were trying to drive over the last few years. In many ways, like I said before, the strategy that we had put in place was working. It was delivering the outcomes that we wanted. But there was something else that happened in this period, which in my judgment will be the most transformational outcome for us and take us to the next level. Along with driving the strategy, which was based on winning today, winning tomorrow, and the three pillars that you see out there, around 2 years ago, we started thinking about the organizational transformation which Graham referred to and Alan spoke of, which was Connected for Growth. Connected for Growth is really that one change, that transformation which gives us the edge. It unleashes the potential across the organization by creating a seamless organization, a seamless marketing organization, and an organization which provides clarity, helps us decide clearly who does what, drives empowerment, enables us to be more global, more local, and more agile, something that every organization aspires to be, particularly in the world that we find ourselves in. Now you've heard of this. I want to give you a set of some examples as to how it's added value for us. And if I was to take this organization, the first thing I would say is the beauty of that one seamless marketing organization has, amongst other things, provided us clarity. Clarity in terms of who should do what. And the who should do what has been based on who is best placed to do that. So if I was to take a global organization, the global team, frankly, must not focus on anything other than the things which absolutely benefit from scale or expertise. Things that no one else in the organization can do must only be done and can only be done by the global team. And there are several examples of that. So be it the work which we need to do on our brands, the thinking about our brands, the key, the point of view that our brand needs to have, the purpose that our brands need to stand for, embody, and take forward. That's something that cannot be done differently across different places. And yes, when a global brand team will think about what this is, the manifestation of that and the expression of that will be very local so that it resonates in the markets. But the conception of this has to happen at a global level. Or indeed, breakthrough technologies which can power our innovation stream, benefits from expertise and benefits from scale. The best example of that is the one on the right which you see, which is Persil Power Gems. Now Persil Power Gems was work which was done over years by people in our R&D labs and our marketeers put together, and they've come up with a new format in laundry, a totally disruptive, first to the world format. And this format marries the benefits of a powder and a liquid together. It offers incredible cleaning to the consumer, and it's wonderful for the consumer, but it's also wonderful for the planet. It removes all the fillers and the stuff which didn't do any of the cleaning. It dramatically improves the greenhouse gas profile of the offerings that we've got. Now these are the sorts of technological breakthroughs that have to be done and run at a global level. And that's really what the global team focuses on. But if I was to then now shift gears and to say, what's happened as far as our local markets are concerned? The one marketing organization has meant that our local teams are far more empowered. Work has shifted and decision-making rights have shifted and some resources shifted to allow us to be more connected with what's happening in those local markets, allowing our people to respond well to the needs of the local market as well as the competitive changes that are taking place. This chart is just a set of a few examples, few amongst tens of examples that have taken place over the last year or so, which demonstrate how we've unleashed creativity and innovation across the organization. So be it a fragrance variant that you might have launched, or indeed the extension into a new benefit space extension into a platform, the skin-friendly range in China that we've got, again, a wonderful example. Here's the skin-friendly range of comfort, inspired by a local need, endorsed by local dermatologists, etc., brought into the market between idea to launch in a 6-month period. Or indeed, the example that you see of a new brand which got launched. A new brand called Live Open was put into the market in Argentina, which really leveraged and took open innovation to a completely different level. It looks at us exploring an entry into a large, relevant new market of insect repellency. And in Argentina, we are exploring whether it is possible for us to have a differentiated offering and a differentiated play in that market. That's really what's happened there. So as you would see here, Connected for Growth has unleashed speed, innovation, and agility, and has enabled people to do things locally for sure. But the real value of Connected for Growth is more than addressing local needs. The real value of this is the opportunity for us to have many ideas that we see. Some of these ideas and local innovations have the potential to become global ideas. They have global scale and can be picked up and rolled out across the world. And I want to refer to the last example that you see here, which is Cif Duo, to illustrate what I mean when I talk about that. Now, the Cif Duo was an idea which came up in Italy, but there was a team which says, wouldn't it be wonderful if you can take the Cif spray and see whether you can allow the consumer to get the benefit of a spray and a foam, but through one bottle, one trigger mechanism without making any change. Wouldn't that be great? It provides the versatility, allows consumers to use it differently on different occasions, and would be a great value add. That idea was brought to life working with local third-party resources and packaging, and a clever idea which involved a slight manipulation and a change in the nozzle enabled us to actually deliver both. When this idea came to light, it was clear that this is an idea which must go beyond Italy, and over the last several months, we've rolled it out to 15 markets and can potentially go even further. So hopefully this gives you a sense of how Connected for Growth is driving the transformation that we feel so strongly about and can make a difference for us. So in a way, that's really all that I thought I'd share with you. I'd look to summarize what I'd said. Home care had set out a certain strategy at the end of 2014. It was a strategy which was looking to drive value creation after having recognized that we had finished the period of investment. Now was the time for us to drive competitive growth ahead of the markets and demonstrate that we can do so with a sharp step up in profitability. Results over the last few years do show that it is possible for us to do that, and more importantly, the experience that we've got in this period gives us the confidence that we can get to the 16% operating margin that we've spoken of at the strategic review, because the more we dive into this space, more we see there is plenty of runway ahead of us through 5S, through ZBB, and through the other initiatives that we are talking about. While all of that was the outcome of the strategy that was put in place, nothing has enthused me more than the C4G initiative that we launched, genuinely a transformational initiative, and in my judgment will allow us to try and get to almost the holy grail that every organization hopes to achieve, which is how do you get the benefits of scale while retaining the fleet-footedness, the agility, the nimbleness, and the focus in local markets with local consumers. That's really, we are well on our way, and there is much more that we need to do to fully realize that opportunity, but like I said, well on our way. That's really it from me, and thank you very much. We have about 5 minutes more for any questions that you might have on this. Yeah.
It's James Edwards-Jones from RBC. Where did those market growth forecasts that you were talking about come from, and what are the absolute levels that are implied in there? Obviously, if you're making comparisons with the US and Brazil, it depends on what those markets are going to grow, and I think there's quite a lot of doubt about that.
Oh, for sure. So we have an internal modeling exercise. We have a team which studies market growth. We have our internal factors which determine it. But two of the biggest factors that drive this, there are many factors in this model, is population growth, GDP growth assumptions, which we've picked up from many areas, and the shift that happens as a result of other factors like the increase in women moving into the working class, urbanization, and other drivers. Putting all of this together, we have our own models to determine what sort of market growths are we likely to see, and using those models, these are the conclusions that we've come to. Yeah.
Thank you. You outlined a lot of steps you took to get this dramatic margin expansion over the past 3 years. From here to get more margin expansion, you spent a lot of time talking about getting faster to market with innovations. Can we fairly interpret that a lot of the margin expansion to come is just from mix, selling more premium, more profitable products?
I think mix has a role to play, but like I said, the experience that we've had in our 5S journey and in our ZBB journey tells us that there is plenty of runway ahead of us to drive inefficiency and cost out of the system and improve our margins. So yes, mix has a role to play, innovations have a role to play, but simple acts of efficient management of cost and elimination of non-value added complexity will contribute substantially.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So